In this video, I'm going to explain to you exactly what a high-level, low-level board structure means, why you would want to use it, how to use it, how to build these boards out, and how to automate it. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tara. I'm the founder of a company called Simple Day. We're Monday.com partners, and over the past couple of years, we've helped hundreds of companies get started with Monday.com. If you need help implementing the product or need a custom implementation, my contact information is in the description below. I can't wait to meet you. Now, before we jump into the boards, I want to do two things. Number one, I want to set the stage in terms of what use case we're going to be using. And number two, I want to explain exactly what high-level, low-level boards means. This may be a concept that you've heard about, but I want to make sure it's crystal clear exactly what it is. For this use case, we're going to use the example of one of our past clients. It was a bank that was growing very, very quickly. So they were opening up new branches in new locations every couple of months. And as you can imagine, opening up a new bank branch is really complicated, and there's a lot of different steps that needed to happen. So what we did for this client is we created what we call a high-level and low-level board structure. So what that means, and we're jumping into the second part, what that means is that you have one board that gives you a high-level overview of everything going on. So in this case, we can see the status of all of the branches, understand how many branches are being opened up by this bank and what each of them are up to, the timelines, and different relevant information. But we were also able to see and create low-level boards, which was a low-level view. What that meant is that we can see individual boards with individual tasks per bank for that specific project. So just to make sure that this is crystal clear, we had one high-level board that showed you all the banks that they were opening and the statuses of all of them and some key information, but information that people on an executive level wanted to see. It wasn't the nitty-gritty and it wasn't every single task. It was big picture, understanding what's going on, the timelines, the statuses, big picture of each branch actually being ready to open. On the low-level boards, there were numerous boards. Each new branch that had to be opened had its own board. It was essentially a template that we just kept on reusing because it was always the same tasks, but each one for each branch had its own board. So the low-level boards was each individual branch, one board for each for a branch. And then we had high level where all the information was taken together. And that's essentially what a high level, low level board structure is. This is just one example of how you would use a high level, low level structure. I've seen it used in so many different use cases. Other examples could be for a nonprofit. You can have grants, and the high level would be a summary of all the grants, and the low level would be each individual grant. I've seen for people that are selling houses. So low level is each individual house and the high level is all of the houses. I've seen it for marketing companies. I've seen it for website developers. The same concept. You have a high level board and then low level boards for each individual project. I do recommend this kind of setup for something that is a complicated project. If you just have a few tasks that you need for a specific project, I would not do this setup because then you're going to have a lot of different boards and it's going to be hard to find what you need to do. In this specific use case with the bank, there were tons and tons of tasks that they needed to do. And that's why they decided, and we decided with them, that it would be the best structure to separate out these boards. You do need to keep in mind that depending which plan you are on within Monday.com, that there are limitations about the number of boards that you're allowed to connect. So on the Pro plan, you can connect a certain number of boards, low-level boards to a high-level board. On the Enterprise plan, you can connect more. So just make sure to check out those connection requirements because I've seen a lot of clients that get in trouble with this because they assume they can use this structure and they really can't. Now, we're going to start from scratch and jump into creating these boards so I can show you exactly how you can create them. And then we're going to talk about how you can automate them to be connected together. So let's jump in. I'm going to start by building out the high-level board. So I'm simply going to click on this plus button on a board and new board. I'm going to call it branches. And I'm just going to hit create board. And this is essentially going to be our high level board of all the different branches. Again, so we can see big picture. I'm going to keep this really simple. So I'm going to keep the board exactly how it is. Okay. I'm not going to add more columns. Obviously, you'd want to customize this. Now, the next step is to create your low-level board. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to create a new board. And let's just say we'll call this Main Street Branch. Okay, so here you can see now we have two different boards, one of all of the branches. I'm actually going to just, for ease, we're going to call this high level. Okay, and here we have our low level board, the Main Street branch. Now, what I'm going to do on this high level board is I'm going to add the first item to be called Main Street. Okay, now, like I said, we have more than one branch. So I'm going to actually just duplicate this and let's call this one Fort Street branch. And here we're going to create it. Obviously, if you have a complicated project, like I said, you'd want to use a template, but just for the sake of this example, we're keeping it very simple. Okay, no items, very straightforward. Now, our high-level board, the branch board, right? We want to connect to our two different branches. So here I'm going to call this Fort Street branch. Okay, so here we have our two different branches. And they're not connected, right? These boards are not connected. So we don't see information from one board to another, which is what we want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus button and I'm going to look for something called connected boards. And I'm going to add a connected board column. What that means is that I can select a board that we're going to connect to. In this case, I'm actually going to connect to both of our branch boards and I'm going to hit set as two-way connection and I'm going to connect these boards. I'm also going to add a mirror column and I'm going to show you what that does. So you can see here that I've automatically have two new columns, a connected board column and a mirror column. This connects to our low-level boards. If I go to Main Street over here, you can see now that I also have a new column, which will connect to that high level board. So essentially, we have three different tasks, right? Here's our three different items for the Main Street branch that we want to connect to the high level board. So I can simply go here, click on connect item, and you can see that it's now connected to Main Street. Now, if we go back to our high level board, what you see over here in this status column that's called mirror, because it's actually showing us the information from the low level board, we can see exactly what the status is on that project. And this is the whole idea, that you can come to this board and see every single thing going on within that project. And we can do the same thing with this Fort Street. So let's just add a task 1, and we're going to add a task 2. And it's the exact same concept. I can come here, I can choose Fort Street, and let's just mark both of these as done, just to show you the difference. And when you come here, you can see that both of these tasks are marked as done, and these tasks are in different stages of being completed. Now, obviously, like I said, you'd want to build these boards out more so they give you more information. But the concept, like we said, is that you have a high level and then you have a low level. Now we could build dashboards off of this so we can see where our projects are. We can have more mirror columns so we can see more information about the project, maybe the different people working on it, or we want to see the time spent on it, or we want to see the timeline. There's a lot of different information that you can see, but essentially this is how we connect high level boards to low level boards. Now, let's talk about automations, because we want to essentially be able to automate that these boards are connected, right? Like whenever I add a task to the Main Street branch, I want it to automatically be connected here so that way I can see the information. So I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can automatically connect these boards. The first thing that you can do is you can add something called an item default value. In order to do this, you do have to be an owner of a board. If I click on these three dots, I click default item value. What I can decide is every single time a new item on this board is created, any of these values that I want to show. So let's say I always want it to be not started. And for here, I would always want it to link to Main Street. So I just choose my options and I hit save. Now let's do another test. So here we have item 4, and we're going to see in a second that the status is going to be marked as not started and it's automatically connected to Main Street. This is a really simple way to automatically connect the different boards. You do have to set it up once the board is created, but you can see that everything is connected. And every time I create a task, it's automatically connected. Now, we're going to jump into something that's a little more complicated that's called match automations. Match automations is when you match information from one board to another board. So essentially, we want to match everything on Main Street on this board to another board. And we need to do that by having some information that's the exact same, and we're going to match it. There's 2 different ways to do match automations. The first way is through an automation, and the second way is through workflows. So let's start with the automations. Now, in order to do something like this, you do need some kind of column that's going to match, that's going to be the exact same information because, again, we want to match it. So I can do something really simple, like I can add a status column here, and I can change this. Let's say I'll just change this to be Main Street. Okay. And now what I can do, so here, this one would say Main Street. And this essentially is going to be my trigger to match to the high level board every time an item is created. Now there's 3 different kinds of triggers that you can use. If you open up the automations and you just search for the word match, so here you can see that I have 3 different options. I can do something when an item is created in this board. I'm going to connect certain columns. When a column changes, I can match it. And when a column changes, then I'm going to also match it, but it's a different column, like not the exact column that I want. Now, these 3 automations you can set up in order to automatically match the different options. So I'm going to do, let's say this one, and I'm going to say here, I'm going to have to say when column changes, status 1, because remember, that's the column that we used. I'm going to actually jump in the order here because the other board that we want is the branches board. Remember, that's what we want. Our branch is high level. And so we're connecting this and we're going to choose the link to the connected board column. So we want to match when status 1 changes, we're actually matching status 1 to the name. Okay. And we're going to hit create automation. So now let's see what happens. Now I'm going to just do it on item number 4. If I change this to Main Street, okay, what's going to happen is that status change will trigger the connection. And here you can see that Main Street is connected. Like I said, there are 2 other match automations that you can also do in order to connect these, depending on what your trigger is. Now, to take this to the next level, and if you want to be even more sophisticated about this, I'll say, like if you have more requirements or something like that, you also can do a workflow. Now, to build a workflow, you would just simply go here and you can click on workflow. I actually already built this workflow over here for you just to show you how it works. And here you can see that I built this workflow. I tested it. It's actually connected to a different board, but I just want to show you what it is. So here you can see that I have when status changes to something. Now that's the exact same thing, remember, that we had in the match automation. And I simply need to fill out these columns. So when status changes, I need to find the matching item on the other board, and then I need to connect the boards. It's the exact same type of automation that we had within the other board. Now, there's some things, though, that workflows has and that automations doesn't have. So let me just show you, for example, if you go here, you can see that I also have the option of found and not found. So what's that telling you is if we can find the matching item, connect it. But if it's not found, then do something else. So a great example over here would be, I would say, if you find the matching branch item on the high level board, connect it. If you don't, notify me. I want to know if something's not connected. So I simply can hit the plus and I can add in an action. Let's say I'll just do notify. And I can just add in any kinds of notifications, Slack, Teams, create an update. But what I hope you see here, and I know this is not a video about specifically how to build out workflows, this is just the concept of it, is that workflows are more sophisticated. You can do more things with workflows and you have more options within workflows. So if you're getting started with Monday.com, I definitely recommend that you understand when you should be using a high-level, low-level structure. Check out automations, think about the item default values, and definitely think about checking out workflows so that way you can build out something really sophisticated that's just automated for you and saves you time. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and remember to subscribe to receive tips and tricks on how to use Monday.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.